out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Why, hello there, Tim.
Hello.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 102 of Dismembering Whole, the podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
Myself, Tim Aslin.
we dismember a whole film. Every week, in fact. We discuss what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything else we happen to find interesting or noteworthy. Timothy, anything else to add?
What a wonderful British accent you have.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. That was just a non-accent. Great. Well, hey, that was just in the spirit of today's film. But hey, I mean, anything else we like to say about this show, if you're joining us for the first time, in addition to what...
Can you imagine if this is your first time?
Someone was like, finally, a horror podcast episode on my favorite movie, Gothic.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, really, I feel like it is kind of, it's a buried something. Like, you know, it's
no doubt
something I'm very excited to talk about. I don't know. That's the gist. You'll pick up. We have different sections. I just said what they were. We come at it from a certain angle. We come at this show from a filmmaker angle, angle of we're just friends talking about it. So we're in a free space to slip into what could be harsh criticism, but is just us having fun together talking about a movie. That's the angle we're going with.
Yeah. You know what I think about sometimes? You know, when you just get kind of going on a thing, like a rant or whatever, and you're just plowing ahead. I often am like, you know, I'll get worked up over something, and sometimes I realize that other people think that it's like it means a lot to me. You know what I mean? Like that it's like serious because I'm ranting. But like, especially in this realm, like the realm of this podcast, it's all kind of not in jest, but like it's all lighthearted.
Well, it's the weird thing of like, because nothing's important, everything's important, and vice versa. Like
I'm passionate. I think I get really passionate about the possibility of greatness.
Yeah.
And so when you see something that like either is shying away from like trying to achieve or like you know move in that direction, or is like actively undercutting the ability for it to potentially happen.
Right.
I'm like, no! Why'd you do that? Come on, what the fuck?
Yeah, I do feel like that's at the base of what we're doing here. This is like an effort to also make movies better somehow, us included.
Because I was thinking about like our retrospective episode and how we say things like that movie sucked or whatever. And I think about like the filmmakers themselves, right? Like I also think we don't what do you call it? We don't outwardly give enough credit and like say the names of directors enough.
I think that's because it's easier to get into criticism, because what we're doing here is like we do want to separate the filmmakers from the movies in a way, because we are talking about this and it's why it's hard to like, it was so hard for me to criticize like when we had just seen the latest Insidious film, because I'm like, these people like are now, you know, I feel bad doing it. Less so now, you know, like with, you know, this movie, it's like whatever movie, as time goes on, it's just the movie. And that always rings true.
I think that's a really important and good distinction.
And that always rings truer to me too, because like I identify with, and this is like how all creatives, artists talk about it, is like any song, poem, movie, whatever you write, it's something outside of yourself anyways. Mm-hmm. But I mean,
I really, at the end of the day, I never want to like hone in on the person themselves and be like, you're a bad person because you made a thing that I didn't like. Because that's dumb. That's not how I feel either. But like, I do want to be able to be like, oh, that movie was trash, and
Right.
not, it's not personal.
Well,
Because I'm sure somebody could watch anything I've made and be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That sucked.
and I mean, also, it's just like, can come down to another way to put it. If we're passionate, it's just because we love movies. And I'm sure that's why you're here too. We do care.
Right.
They are important on some level.
Well, and part of why I say that is because I think this week's film is like this weird
Yep. Check. Ding.
combo
Uh-huh.
of that feeling of like, what the fuck? And I kind of love it, but I kind of hate it.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. We're already on the same page with this film.
What's going on? Is it good? Like, did I like it?
I kept talking about, again, we're talking about from 1986, Ken Russell's Gothic. And Tim, remember I'd recommended his film The Devils, which really is like, I would wished so much that we had watched that movie together too, just because it was like just an experience like this, like his filmmaking sensibility. We'll get into it. Anyway, I'm glad we're doing this. Cool. Well, let's actually get into it and watch the trailer.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Again, from 1986, Gothic.
Before Mary Shelley could write her masterwork of terror, Frankenstein, she had to experience it.
I have it in mind to raise the dead.
Harry. Yes, the skull of the Black Monk. His appearance was said to herald disaster. Gaze into the eyes. Conjure up your deepest, darkest fear. Call that fear to form, to life.
It's alive! It's no good. You can't run away from your own fears.
All right. So how would we rate Gothic per our rating system? Would we tell ourselves to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it? I, right now, am going to say rent it because it's so unique and unlike anything else. If you haven't seen Ken Russell films, I think it's so weird, Tim, kind of like you said, don't know whether to hate or love it. I feel like I have to see it again to know that. I want to think I'll like it more because kind of like how I don't hear lyrics when I'm hearing a song I'm into for the first time, I like missed most of the dialogue just because the experience was so overwhelming. You hear the term fever dream thrown around a lot. I think it's very fitting for this film, and that's something I am drawn to in a lot of ways, just the kind of non-logic a lot of it has. This movie's so abstract, it can make it hard to sink into, but at the same time, I like that about it, that it is abstract. It's like, unfamiliar, at first it can be hard to sink into that. Like I told you, the way like how the first time I saw 8.5, I was just so kind of just felt gross and weird afterwards. Only time I haven't revisited it. It's very similar to this, but I mean, because of that, because of how unique all that is, I would say like, I'd tell myself to rent this and see what you can make of it, which we're about to try to do.
Yeah. Ah, man. I think that I want to say rent it for basically all of the same reasons. But like, I don't want to watch it again.
Yeah.
But I might.
I want to watch it
eventually.
Again. Yeah. If you could, I really missed not being able to watch this with you in the room at the same time. This one, maybe most out of all these quarantine films we've been watching. But like, it'd be fun to show this to someone who is interested and watch it under those circumstances. So that counts for me.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say it's a Rent too. It's wacky.
Yep. It's bizarre. It's wacky. It's crazy.
Like, if you kind of just look at it from a performance point of view and from an aesthetic point of view, actually, you can't just boil it down to that. But because then I realized there's like 4 other elements that I'm like are really good. So it's not singular in that sense. So
Yeah.
I think I guess that's what I'm realizing is that because there's multiple individual aspects that are really cool and working, that in spite of them maybe not like as a whole like working together at all times,
At the same time, it seems to be like succeeding in what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I know. I agree. It is odd. Something's weird. I mean, the whole movie is weird. Maybe that's just what it is.
Yeah.
But because of all of that, I think it does, rise to a Rent for me.
And, make yourself not feel so bad. I know you love anything that you can tell was made in the mid-'80s, right? So
Yeah.
me too. Which this
Yeah,
would...
there's definitely things that I'm like, kind of what I was saying earlier, where I'm like, this is cool, but what would have made it really fucking cool is
Right.
this or that. Like a couple just little things that are a result partially of just the era and also of the filmmaker. That's a sensibility thing.
Yeah.
But like if I were doing this movie, there's a couple things where I'm like, I would just change this one element, and I think the result of that would make me be like, this movie fucking rules.
Right.
So whatever.
For me, that was the equivalent of that was more just like expectations I may have had during it that weren't met,
really?
that like weren't met. And
Yeah.
so I was like let down or whatever, or like a little bored during a section, but that's a weird word for, I don't know, dragged in a section, but like, once I see it, that's another reason why if I see it again, I won't have those same expectations. So
Yeah, I feel that. Cool.
and out of any other all 101 movies we've watched him, this really fits the bill of a film that I am just so excited to hear how you would summarize it for our summary.
Okay. Oh, God. Okay, so it's the, oh, Jesus, what fucking era are we in? The early 1800s? 1826 or something like that?
Yeah, and maybe give the context what this is about, too, like, or what it's inspired it.
Okay, so, right. So we're in the early 1800s, and we're in, where the fuck are we?
During the summer of 1816 in Switzerland.
Okay. Oh, right. They talk about Switzerland. That's right. Okay, so here we go. So we're in Switzerland. We're in a big fucking manor, and it's Lord Byron's manor. Do you know who Lord Byron is, Ryan?
No, only from what I learned from this film.
So he was a poet and a writer back in the day, and was like sort of famous for being a bit of a douche and a womanizer and a drunk and all of the above, right? He was sort of like the modern, what would the modern day equivalent be? Who's like that now? Like somebody who were like, what a fucking amazing artist, but also what a fucking mess. He's that guy.
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf. I don't know. That's not a good example.
Oh, I like Shia. Yeah,
I do too. I love Shia. Anyway, so it's his place, and his friends, who are also writers, have come to visit. They are also famous. It's Percy Shelley, who at the time was a very successful poet-writer, and his sort of wife, but not really, don't worry about it, Mary, who we know in popular culture as Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. And sort of famed for kind of overshadowing her male companion when she wrote Frankenstein, and people were like, whoa, wait a minute, what the fuck? Like, she can write too, and she's better than her husband? Holy shit.
Where we are in this film, she had not written it yet.
That's right. So there's a lot of really cool... Mary Godwin is what she's called in the movie. I assume that was her maiden name. I don't know. Anyway, so They also bring along a friend of theirs, Claire, I guess stepsister to Mary. Anyway, so this is prior in historical terms to the writing of a lot of these famed sort of things that came out of these three writers. Anyway.
But not as it just before it. This is about the night that inspired
That's right.
Frankenstein.
So what ends up happening is that they kind of have they have a bit of a romp, right? Like they drink some laudanum and they get wacky and kind of trip balls, and they predicate the night on like, let's talk about what our own individual horrors would be. Like if we were going to make up a horror story, what would that be? And then that kind of just spirals because they're tripping into like you said, a fever dream of different hallucinations and like crazy interactions between the four of them, because there's also another character.
Five of them. Doctor would be five.
Oh, wait. 5? 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, you're right. 5, yeah. So the doctor...
Dr. John.
Lord Byron's doctor. Byron had some... I forget what his afflictions were in reality, but he had some shit going on. Anyway, they all just get fucking wacky. And they run around this manor at night for the night and, like, flip the fuck out with each other. And it's sexy and it's scary and, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, kind of antics ensue. There's lots of, like, cool, weird imagery and, like, near-death kind of moments, and is it all just a dream or is it really happening?
Right.
And, like, that kind of thing. And it's cool.
It vacillates. It vacillates between, like, super high feeling stakes and high emotions and then just taking everything, like, in stride.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, and having said that, and not being somebody who knows the literature that came out of these people particularly well, I have a suspicion that a part of how this film was constructed was to specifically take passages and, like, references from their writings and imbue it into the story of this and into the dialogue specifically. In other words, it's like, I don't know this to be true, but I assume that there are things that that any of them say that are sort of known as famous lines from Frankenstein or from, some of the stuff Byron was famous for, which I don't know his stuff at all, but like,
right.
Whatever. I'm sure if I looked it up, I'd be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Well, and just to get through your summary, how does this all kind of culminate and end? Like what happens?
What happens is they wake up in the morning and it was all kind of a dream. It's like one of those.
Yeah.
Everybody's just chill.
But I mean, there's other kind of like through lines and elements going on. There's something about like a miscarriage happening.
That's true. Yeah. There's all of their sort of personal inner demons are coming to the surface throughout this fever dream. Byron, I think it seems like he had a son who had died. And Shelley had a
you mean Percy?
Was it an abortion or was it just a miscarriage? Do you remember?
I don't know. But I mean, there was the one that kind of like was imagined during it.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of baby stuff. Like, yeah. And what I mean by that is like dead baby stuff. And it kind of culminates with that, where that seems to be the underlying thing. And it makes sense, right? Because we're talking about Frankenstein ultimately, which is a story about trying to reanimate or to avoid death, to recreate a life.
Yeah.
And so to have this through line underneath of like Mary having guilt over her baby not surviving and that desire to control life and potentially recreate life out of death is really the foundation of Frankenstein. And then how that haunts the world is like, that is Frankenstein, right? It's the constructed being that Frankenstein creates is now sort of haunting the world and seeking revenge on his creator. And so, you know, if it's a really cool concept, right? Because if you think about if you were going to give a consciousness to the dead baby,
yeah,
how would they feel about the fact that you were the cause of both their creation and their demise?
Right.
If they were reanimated to have a consciousness. That's a pretty fucked up and trippy and deep thing to think about, and I think it's part of why Frankenstein, the story, is so fucking intense.
Yeah.
And I tried reading it, by the way, and the language is really tough.
I read it in high school. There's a class we took it.
So there you go.
If you did
summary.
If you did not watch the film with us, I encourage you.
You don't know what we're talking about.
I encourage you to read the Wikipedia summary. It gives a thorough. It paints a picture.
Oh, and here you go. Like, here's a good example of something that Lord Byron was famous for having written that kind of speaks to his character in the film. He wrote the narrative poem Don Juan. So, you know, we kind of all know the gist of Don Juan, womanizer, kind of blah, blah, blah.
Cool.
There you go.
All right. Well, that's good work. And then let's get into, well, I'm going to repeat the same word. Our next section, what worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm. Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I mean, like we've said, how nuts it all is. Worked for me, Tim. Like, I mean, not knowing what's going to happen next is always just like the top of my list for my enjoyment of a film, you know? And that's not a given with a lot of movies.
Just the nuttiness and the like off the sort of rails nature of this type of story is, I don't know, it's just really fun.
So rather than, you know, give me a play-by-play of the whole movie, it's so much. It's more on like a moment-by-moment level we're talking
really
about here.
Is.
So
yeah.
For our last section, our things of note section, we like to talk about any indelible moments, which this movie just is.
It's full of them.
It's just through and through indelible moments, right? So I was gonna think I had this under things of note, but I think to paint a picture of just this film and what we're talking about, I have down just an example sequence in the film to help paint a picture. Cool. But this is under the context of how nutty it is something that worked for me. So I'm gonna go over here, Tim, best I can, how I have it down. The hide and seek sequence.
Yes.
Toward the beginning. So they're all there having dinner. I guess it's,
Let's just clarify. It's more Ready or Not than hide and seek if we're referring to movies we've already watched.
Well, yeah, they say hide and seek, but
well, I just mean in terms of the vibe, right? Remember, Ready or Not was very much like in a manner and like had the Gothic sort of vibe to it. And then we watched a movie called Hide and Seek, which was like not really about hiding and seeking at all. Right. So it's like this is more of that, like, we're in a manner, we're playing the game hide and seek.
Well, I'm going to tell you what happens, Tim. They're having dinner, and then Claire tries to look at Lord Byron's feet because she wants to see if they are demon goat hooves. Right. He gets mad and almost pushes her into the fire, but then they kiss each other. So then she says, well, if we want to do more of that, or all of us, first we got to play hide and seek and you have to find us. She like screams that, like runs out of the room, like, you know, super excited. She's very, very manic. And then so they're playing hide and seek. This is all continuous. Mary finds, she comes across a knight in shining armor that has a huge snake on it. So she starts petting it. Then the other people who work in the house, they're like prepping food, like milking goats and like chopping vegetables. Claire runs by them screaming, where she ends up in the basement area where as soon as she gets startled by a rat, Lord Byron pops out of nowhere, kisses her again. Then that's happening as Percy comes across a like multicolored disco lit like bed stage where it's either like where it's like a costumed animatronic or person, like belly dancer with like a plastic mask, belled and a belled hoop covering her groin, and she's like dancing and making the hoop jingle. And then we have the Dr. John. He cuts himself straightening a crucifix just all of a sudden, and then we jump to what we presume is later all of a sudden, where Percy is naked on the roof in the rain trying to get struck by lightning. Yes. I just felt like we had to, I don't know, an example really helps paint the picture of the kind of nutty we're talking about here.
And there is no cohesiveness to that sequence. It's just one thing after another, right? There's no like, oh, then therefore this is happening. Doesn't exist in this movie. It's just and then and also and then and also. And it's like, whoa, what the fuck? I'm just on the ride. That's
what offers that fever dream feel, and that's that was my biggest takeaway from The Devils. But like, I had that as something that worked because it's just fascinating how it feels like when you're watching it, you're watching something that's both real time and over a long period or indistinguished amount of time. It's interesting.
Well, and what part of what works and what helps support that, and because it really it pretty much is unrelenting. The whole movie just kind of is going on like that.
Yep.
You've got a little bit of like waxing and waning just slightly, but not much. But what sort of keeps it going is the performances. Everybody is freaking out constantly.
Yeah.
And so like they're all so like heightened in their experience that we're just like, of course it's nutty because they're fucking flipping out constantly.
Yeah.
Percy just continues to have meltdowns, and he's like, kind of a combination of somebody who's done way too much coke, but also maybe done like some sort of hallucinogen. And so he's just flying a million miles an hour all the time.
Yeah.
And so that really helps us to kind of be like, well, yeah, of course everything's fucking nutty because that's the state they're in.
I specifically loved what was driving him nutty in a few moments where he thinks he sees this crazy monster, like with I can't even know it's kind of like a slime monster with an eye. And then he sees like a weird, he sees like, or was it Claire sees like a weird kind of werewolf, just like a glimpse of like a wolf face monster, I think.
Percy sees that in the basement too.
Okay. And then he also discovers like monster slime.
Yeah.
I loved that.
The primordial slime.
Yeah. I loved that. And this is also kind of, I loved how this was what really sets us off on the fever dream of it all is they hold a seance, which was really that was really fun. How it was shot, how it was put together, that they were kind of like focusing on a skull, and that was kind of the inciting incident of like we are thinking on our evils, we are conjuring their evils.
That's right,
and then that at the same time sort of is what works as like a sort of gradual realization for them of how can we now put what we unleashed back in the box? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of vague what they're talking about. They know there's just a something that they unleashed. And that's cool.
You know what this movie really just is? It's just a workshop. They're just workshopping their writing.
Hey, it's this is not a bad way. I mean, hey, to lead to Frankenstein.
They're on a little retreat.
Yeah.
A writing retreat. And they're all just, spitballing.
What's funny is we're watching this film because it was submitted by my friend who we were on a writer's retreat when we saw the trailer for this movie on a VHS.
Shit. Wow. Yeah. It's all connected, Ryan.
Yep.
I think that actually that aspect of this story is kind of what is the most pleasing from a thematic standpoint. Let me see if I can articulate what I mean. So the idea of what do we do with our time at any given era in time? And what is entertainment? Like, the ending of the movie sort of stamps this for me, is like when Mary wakes up the next morning after all of this craziness has happened, and she goes outside, and Byron and Claire are having a picnic, and the doctor and Percy are kind of just chilling in the yard.
Kind of like a morning coffee and mimosas kind of vibe, yeah.
Totally, and it's super chill and laid back, and she kind of walks up, and she's a little unsettled or whatever, and Byron just sort of, he like reaches out, and he's like, just having a little fun last night. Like the nights, you'll get used to the nights here, but the day, there's no evil to be seen. There's no ghosts to be seen during the day.
Right.
And so this idea of like, for us in modern day, right? Like right now, we go out, or we go to a bar, or we go to a club, or we go to a movie. We go have these experiences that sort of are, they're our version of that. But like, that's what they would have done back then, right?
Yeah.
They would have created the stories themselves and played them out, or like been affected by them in the way that we go to a movie and we're affected by that experience. But there's something really exciting to me about this notion of like getting wrapped up in that, and like to the point of they have kind of notions of what would you fucking call this? The mysticism that they kind of buy into as a culture of that era, of like, we could have a seance and we are actually conjuring up demons, and they're buying into that. Whereas like now we'd be like, yeah, that's dumb. That's not like ghosts don't exist kind of thing, right? There's a cynicism we have as a culture today because we have learned a bunch of stuff about the world and have made it a decision that some things do and some things don't exist. But back then,
Tim, have we forgotten things about the world?
Exactly. And so even if you just don't worry about what is actually real, it's real to them. And that is their entertainment. And that idea of like spinning into this other realm of like fever dream, we got fucked up and we're having this experience and we kind of are really buying into that, is so weirdly exciting to me.
Well, it's because it's fun.
Right, because it's a naturally sort of manufactured version of fun that needs nothing but your mind and a couple friends.
And I'd say that you can, if you manufacture something, it will then not be manufactured as in fake.
That's right, because it feeds off of itself.
Right, just like
and
how
you feed off of each other.
Tim, I'm reading You Lent Me the Never-Ending Story right now, and it's that idea in a heartbeat of like this storyland is dying when people don't think about it, and it is real when people are telling stories about it.
Yeah, it just makes me really excited because I think it's because we live in a world where if we want to feel excited or titillated, what we turn to is these external things, our phone, other content that people have created, movies, TV, whatever. It's outside of us, and we're trying to go engage with this external thing. And this is an example of kind of the opposite of like how powerful your own storytelling within yourself can be, and your imagination, and you can have a really intense, exciting experience that is, in a way, it's the safest version of entertainment because it's yours. You're doing it, and you get to choose to a certain degree, like how intense or not intense it is.
Right, how much opium you take.
That's right. I don't know. So just as a broad thing, that is really exciting and makes me kind of love the film.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to go, it's like the same idea of like, what do you want to do and you're like for fun? Like we're always like, oh, what should we do tonight? Let's go fucking sit in the woods and get freaked out. Like that sounds amazing to me.
Yeah.
And yet we don't really do that much.
I mean, speak for yourself, but
right.
No, I know you've been clear to say as a society, as in general. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I don't do it as much as I would like by any stretch.
Right.
So anyway,
well, we should change that, Tim.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, I just hear you talk. What stands out as so exciting for you? Yeah, I agree. I said earlier how that the fact that it was so abstract is something I liked, and even though it made it maybe hard to sink into at a first time, but like it's something I really actually do enjoy and respect about this kind of filmmaking, as it's rather than like you hear about this night, and rather than take an approach that's just sort of like here is a straight telling of it, even with a so then kind of typical plotting that this doesn't really have. It makes it more into just it's like a piece of art. I mean, it's weird to say because I think anything is whether it does that or not is a piece of art. But you know what I mean in the abstract sense, it is.
Yeah.
Like how it and how that works. Like where you can say, let's take Lord Byron as an icon or as a personality and tap into that and make that like make that how you tell the story, or make that sort of the veins of the film, versus worrying about, oh, well, we have to stick to some kind of like course of events that feels grounded. Like, a film where what it's about and who it's about is reflected in the film itself and sort of the logic and how it plays out. I just think that's so neat.
That's right. Yeah, there's something really fun about. It's really just kind of an exercise in terms of writing a story like this.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, I know a lot about that era of literature, and I know these things that were said about these people in the past. What if they all were just hanging out? What would that look like? And then you just make shit up based on what you know about them. You definitely, you pull together, you imbue it with the things that you know about each of these people, historically speaking, but then you embellish.
Right.
And I think that's fucking wildly fun as an exercise.
Right. To limit yourself not to, okay, could this have happened necessarily, but limit it to, does this somehow feel true to like getting at a greater spirit or idea?
Yeah.
Or feeling, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really done this as an exercise, but it sounds really fun to be like, almost arbitrarily, just be like, hey, let's pick, okay, so what if, let's see, what if Marlon Brando and Elvis and Marilyn Monroe and Katharine Hepburn just got together one night for a good fucking romp and drink?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would happen? How would that pan out?
Right.
Like, would Brando beat the shit out of Elvis? Would Elvis beat the shit out of Marilyn Monroe? Like, what would happen? How would that go? And that just when you start to go into the what ifs and how would this play out, it's endless, right? You're obviously going to sort of go, well, let's stick to what we kind of know about these people, but then just the experiment of like, let's say Katharine Hepburn and Marilyn Monroe decided that they needed to make out because we know certain things about those people, and if they were in this particular circumstance, is how likely or unlikely are certain scenarios to have happened, and then create a story around that. It just seems fun to me, and I feel like this movie really took advantage of that construct and made it into something fun.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can't help but kind of, like, at least I couldn't help but kind of go away being like, that was fucking nutso and, like, completely off the rails. But, like, I get it, and it felt good.
Right. Totally.
Like, I don't know shit about these historical people, really.
You're right.
I know the vaguest of vague things about them that like some English teacher said once.
But they certainly made an impression. And
right.
How kind of fun, like, let's say if you were one of these people, like, this is how I would want to be remembered, where it's like, don't tell, like, my literal story, like, turn my essence into just an outrageous character.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. If it were, it's funny because if you and I were historical figures, right? We would also be played by Gabriel Byrne and Julian Sands.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? And we'd be like, hell yeah, those guys are much better looking than both of us.
Hey,
look, you gotta rise up when you're getting cast, right? Like,
just put us in those outfits, Tim. You'll see.
Hey, oh man, I love a ruffled shirt.
Right? You're recording in your closet, right? So you can put one on.
I know. Oh, I wish I had one nearby.
No,
I could just put on my bathrobe.
Joke's on you, audience. We're already wearing 18th century garb. No, 1800s garb.
I love a foppish, foppish decor or costume.
Right. I mean, hey, that's just another thing. Like to get into this movie, the aesthetics, like the set dressing, specifically
So
this place,
good.
and then how it was shot. So many cool shots of like you're looking up at a spiral staircase straight up, or like someone's just I don't know, framed with the background a certain way. Lots of neat stuff like that.
You know what they Ken Russell and everybody involved, a choice that they made that really I think helps with the feeling of feeling sort of floaty and weird and like what's the word? It just feels dreamy and all of that, is that I would venture to guess that at minimum 95% of this film is shot with like a 14 millimeter lens. It is all...
Really? Was it that wide?
It's super wide. It's wild. Now, maybe I'm exaggerating.
18
but like,
or 24?
Maybe 24, but I doubt it. For some of the shots, sure. But like, there are so much of like very wide, in your face, like everything is just, even the exteriors is a wide lens.
Yeah.
And because it gives this weird kind of rounding, feel when you move that camera with that lens. Everything kind of on the edges is like warping just a little bit, and you feel it. And that is, it's pretty accurate to like when you're really messed up.
Yeah, it's a way to
the world warps.
Right, and it's a way to it's a way to suggest that, and just being stuck in this night where you don't know what time it is anymore. You're just kind of there. Yeah.
And anytime you're like pushing in on something with one of those lenses, it's just like, whoa!
And we push
Everything
on
feels exciting and
yeah. I mean, a lot of crazy things we push in on. I really liked. I remember just it culminating into the big frenzied ending where I love where I think it's Mary is trapped in this like room of doors, and we're over it.
Yeah.
And like she's trying the different doors, and like what are some of the things she like runs into in there?
God, I don't even remember. She sees like her kid. She sees the dead baby. Well,
Right.
It's weird. She sees the dead baby next to a skeleton of the dead baby, which is pretty intense. Shit, I don't remember the other ones. There's like 6 doors or something like that. I don't know if she opens every one, but it's pretty climactic. You know what I mean? It's sort of like everything comes to a head at that point.
Right. She tries to commit suicide, but she's like gun-ho. She goes and stands on the balcony and is just like, all right, I'm about to do it. Super stoked to do it. But gets stopped by Percy.
One of the things she sees is herself miscarrying the baby.
Right.
And that's filmed in a really cool way, because it, in that sort of dreamlike editing, the editing style of that is to essentially cut and recut the same moment from kind of different angles.
Yeah.
And so it's repeating over and over again, and she can't get out of that kind of repetition. It's the worst kind of nightmare, right? It's like the nightmare where you can't move on.
Yeah.
It's just a fucking repeating thing. It's pretty cool, that sequence.
You also had Dr. John going through, God, he was going through his own thing. He cut himself, or he was saying he got bit by a vampire, but like stabbed his hand with a nail or something.
Yeah, he's having a time. He's having a real time. I think the big sort of one of the underlying things with his character seems to be, because Byron and him have this sort of shout out about the doctor being gay, and I felt really like, I just felt that feeling of like, what a fucking hard thing to experience in an era that's sort of not cool. Not that we live in a world that's totally fine with people being gay yet, but we've gotten better.
Yeah.
But like, to have to be so secretive about who you are, it just immediately was like, I feel for this dude. And it feels like he's essentially like self-harming because he can't express himself the way he wants to. So he ends up taking the cross. I think that's why the crucifix is sort of, a part of his storyline. It's like, it's sort of a stand-in for morality and society and how they view things. And he feels like he doesn't fit into that.
Yeah.
And so what he ends up doing is taking the cross off the wall and slamming his palm into the nail that the cross was on, which is doing two things symbolically, right? One, it's the self-harm and shame sort of spiral that he's going through, because he's also imagining Byron having sex with Claire. Mm-hmm. But it's also a stigmata symbolism, right? So he's doing sort of, I'm getting punished the way Christ was punished, sort of thing to himself. And that's actually, that's pretty deep shit and like really good. Yeah. And his character, he falls apart.
He holds it pretty together, or holds it well pretty together.
Until his hair comes off.
as like the fifth wheel kind of role, I was feeling for him.
Yeah, I really felt for him, because it just, I don't know. I have a lot of friends who are couples, and like, I'm the single dude when hanging out with like 2 or 3 couples, and it's just like, fucking kill me.
Here, dude. I just remembered when Lord Byron sees like the pig head on the ground, and then imagines it as Dr. John's head, just there looking up at him.
Yep. Yeah, there's just wacky stuff, but it is all very rooted in some very clear decisions about who these characters are, fundamentally, and what their plight is as individuals, each one of them. And I think that, like, in terms of being able to write a nutso script like this, but also like staying true to some really clear definitions of those characters, even just as the sort of filmmakers, like, it translates over and totally supports the actions of the characters, and it works very, very, very well.
Yeah.
Byron's a dick. He's such a manipulative, just like.
They seem to all like know that about him and kind of love him for that, though.
I know. That's part of why it's compelling.
Yeah.
In spite of him being, because we know that guy. Mm-hmm. We all know the fucking ego narcissist douche who fucking everybody can't help but like.
Because if he's having a good time, we want in on that.
Right. It's cool.
And is that so bad? There's maybe an angle from, this is a horror movie.
I think the threshold is when you try to put some girl's head in the fire.
Yeah.
Maybe you're crossing a line.
Right. No, and this is through that, like, 1800s perspective of, like, just anything goes. And you can laugh it off.
I think also what's so appealing about Byron as a character, and I imagine that there's some historical, truth to this, he's very much a like, I am not bound by anybody's fucking rules, like society. I'm gonna drink shit. I'm gonna fucking make out with whoever the fuck I want to make out with. I'm gonna fuck around. I don't like, he is completely untethered by social conformity constraints, whatever. Like, he's just like, I'll make out with fucking Percy, I'll make out with John, I'll make out with Claire, I'll make out with Mary. I don't give a fuck. I like all that, you know? And I think that's, you know, when you live in a world that's kind of not oppressive, but like strict, as it were, being around those types of people must be really exciting.
Yeah. Makes for a good weekend, if not a
It's also a slippery sort of double-edged sword because they can be really abusive.
Right. So you have she's literally about to kill herself, Mary, at the end if Percy, blonde dude, doesn't come in and save her.
Yeah.
That's the levels we reach. But then it's so great. I love. Then the next morning, oh hey, how do you sleep? How's it going?
Yeah, it's not like, hey, things got a little out of hand last night, and it kind of was revealing that maybe you've got some stuff that's unresolved that maybe you should go talk to somebody about. Like, there's none of that.
You wonder, I mean, this is kind of a thing that, you know, talk about our society not doing a lot of things. We don't have a lot of area for like just kind of pent up emotional like release or catharsis. Yeah. So I can almost see like, hey, they got something out of their system and hey, we're all here. We're all okay. Like, hey, he does or doesn't have a cut on his hand anymore. I forget. But like, point being, they're all there and okay.
Well, that's right. You can make the argument that essentially everything that was, you know, in the events of the night were all fabrication, that nothing harmful or actually like destructive happened.
Right. We don't see if there are slime stains or evidence of that still anywhere. We don't see if there are windows broken, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a pretty strong argument that all of it was imagined.
Well, the same thing. I mean, that's kind of, I don't know, great. I don't know. It was just fun how from Lord Byron's, but he has his little, like, you know, his house elves, his invisible sort of like crew of workers that just like, oh, you know, just put in the earplugs. It's another Friday night, you know, Lord Byron's house.
He's even got his woman servant who, when he pulls his rope bell thing, right, she just comes and gets naked for him.
Right. So yeah, like point me, he's in a position to not at all be concerned about a broken window or slime somewhere.
That's right. Somebody will fix it.
You know, take care of it. So yeah, it was just such like a I don't know, that next morning moment just was great.
You know, I gotta be honest, it felt a lot like my college experience.
I mean, when you were talking about even as in your preamble of like, we don't go to a forest and see what happens. Like, yeah, ditto, college experience.
You know, I was friends with a bunch of theater nerds, you know, like technically I was a theater nerd. And, you know, theater dorks who want to go smoke some weed or maybe do some opium or, you know, certainly drink a lot, because that was what I did. You know, you put a group of those people together and A, you're gonna all get naked. Like, that was a given. And B, you're gonna just start acting out and being goofy and weird. And like, you know, I spent an entire evening with a 12-pack, beer 12-pack box, like the box from it, on my head, and I cut out holes in the box. And it was like a helmet that I wore for the night. And nobody thought anything of it. That just was what was going on that night. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you just get wacky because you're experimenting and expressing yourself in some weird way just to try things out and see what comes of it.
Right. Being embracing wackiness always makes more of a moment, like, or it always makes, you know, it adds more distinction to an evening, let's say.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in my experience, most of the time it was very fun and it never like devolved into anything bad or destructive.
Yeah, no one was about to jump off a balcony. Yeah.
Exactly. And once in a while, somebody kind of got a little too drunk or whatever, and you had to kind of be like, let's ratchet it back. But for the most part, it was all about kind of like playing off the other people and seeing how much you could make them enjoy themselves by your interaction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's in particular with theater people, there's the performative nature of it. And like, you know, you're trying to one-up each other or egg each other on and see where we can get. And it's a fun place to be in.
You're right. It's so perfect. I mean, yeah. Who else but theater people like in this? That's who they are. Like as soon as she goes hide and seek, you know, they all like jump
That's
up
right.
and are doing it. Oh yeah,
You're gonna put on weird costumes and shit, and just be like, "That's what's happening tonight." I'm gonna wear a beer box on my head.
Anything else you want to
worry about it?
Anything else you want to highlight for what worked or?
So yeah, a couple little things. Just design-wise, in the movie, there's a pretty grounded sort of reality of the place they're in, right? Big manor, big rooms, you know, tall doors, tall ceilings, that kind of thing. Like all of that, and the use of those rooms and running around them, and the diversity of the decoration per room was really just fun, because like when you have any story that's in a singular location, you want diversity, right? Like you want to feel like you're going into new and exciting places. So like having the barn, having the basement, this sort of dungeony area, the roof, like the balcony, like every place had sort of a different vibe. Like long hallways have vibes to it. Like all that stuff really kept the pace and the momentum of the story going. But then on top of it, you have character design that aren't the four characters. You have these sort of entities that exist. You've got the knight, you've got the belly dancing animatronic thing, you have Percy's sort of mirror self, which is a really freaky fucking looking design. You only really see it once or maybe twice. You have the wolf monster sort of thing. Like there's a lot of creatures, so to speak, in this movie that are fucking cool, and the design is cool. And, you know, it's obviously appropriate for these people to be seeing those things. And I think those creatures really kept me in a lot of ways, because it's like, what's next?
Yeah.
Constantly.
And you talking about the sort of distinct like locations within the locations. Oh, this is this room. We're here now. That actually worked really well to compensate having no idea where we were in a non-physical sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so beyond that, you know, it's a fun romp. It's just it's wack-a-do.
Wack-a-do. Wack-a-do or wack-a-don't. What's it going to be? All right, let's talk about, see if anything did not work for us in our next section. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
I mean, again, these are like first-time viewing things where I guess I remember the sort of second half, the kind of like second half of the middle, you know, act or whatever, just felt like it maybe dragged a little bit before it picked up with the big finish. But again, I think that's because I wasn't, if I followed more of what was in the dialogue, I think it would have given me a lot more just to sort of chew on throughout and have sort of more of an idea of, you know, what the sort of little threads that were going on were.
Yeah, I think that if you were, like I said before, if you really knew this literature, the inside baseball, so to speak, of this movie might be so exciting.
Right. Well,
it's like like you're catching these little lines and it would just be exciting. It's like little Easter eggs all over the place.
I mean, but that would certainly add to it, but I'm just talking about the dialogue that's there, you know, that I wasn't
Well, that's what I mean is if my theory is true that within the dialogue they're referencing things from their stories, even that would sustain. I think it would prop up the certain sections if they started to wane. If that's what you were getting. Now that's totally theoretical. I have no idea. If
no, it was that
in
I
the
was
script.
I just was so overwhelmed with the visceralness of what was happening that I was literally not following. It's like was watching Shakespeare or something.
Sure,
it wasn't a matter of the dialogue lacking. It was a matter of not hearing it. You know.
Yeah, I get that.
Not processing it, and same goes for like, I don't know. During it and at the end, I was kind of walking away feeling like I don't know if I wasn't really ever sympathizing with the characters. They felt so just drawn in a certain way, but like their performances were intense. So I think again, it was just so much on a first viewing going on. And missing the dialogue. So I was missing sort of if our only into the character is like these kind of through lines or the history of them that we kind of like pick up on if we're listening. I don't know. Again, just kind of like, a couple things on the first viewing that held me back, but I'd be curious to see how they changed.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot going on. It's a lot of characters that no one character really is the story. And so, I felt for Mary and for Dr. John the most.
Yeah.
For sure. Like I felt kind of sympathetic, or they felt like sympathetic characters the most to me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, nobody really it doesn't feel like anybody. I think it's supposed to be Mary's story. I mean, it is Mary's story the most, obviously. She's sort of the climax in her.
It doesn't feel that way when you're watching it. It's kind of all over the place.
It doesn't until the very end when it's her being trapped in this 6-door sort of like room and her having this personal revelation.
Right.
Up until that point, no, it doesn't feel like her story at all.
But
then we get that ending and we're like, oh shit, it is her story, I guess. Well, or at least that point.
We didn't mention it yet, so I don't know how this could fit into either what worked or didn't work. But what did you think of the little bookend tag at the way end?
That's one of my did not works. I hate it.
What was it for those who may not know?
Basically, we're watching them have their little brunch post, chaos night on the lawn of this manor, and everything's kind of cool. And then they just sort of disappear, and we see like a tour boat that's got a tour guide talking about the manor and the fucking history of the manor, and people are walking around the lawn like contemporary tourists are walking around the lawn visiting this. As in, we jump to
place. 1986.
Yeah, and I hate that.
Why?
I just think it undercuts in the whole vibe of the movie. It's not Schindler's List, dude. Like, you don't need to jump and see the survivors at the end. You know what I mean? Like, hey, reminder, everybody, these were real people. Like, that works in Schindler's List because it's about something really fucking different. I think it just undercuts the whole night. It basically says, oh, and if you were wondering, this is all made up anyway. This is like maybe what could have happened one night.
But I mean, we know that already.
I know, but I don't need to be told it again.
Yeah.
By a tour guide.
Did the tour guide say that? We don't know what happened.
Yeah, he goes, this famed night. And there's a name for the night. Like I'm sure they wrote about this particular night.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, following that famed night, this happened and this person survived and this person didn't. And
I guess
Claire had Byron's baby. Right. And it's like, dude, it's not a documentary.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really like or dislike it. I think that there is an element that's kind of neat to it as far as saying, I was going on how I like that it was all abstract and everything, but there's something kind of fun of the idea that if a movie is saying, okay, within the context of the movie, to then go, this is exactly how it happened, like here's the,
Sure.
I don't know. Something tickles me about that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I don't like having when you have a wacky Like when you're grounded in this sort of wacky reality, I actually get annoyed when that gets broken because it feels like the mystique of that world is now being undercut and broken. And but it's like we already came out of the dream as Mary and sat on the lawn. Now we're coming out of that dream with it's like leaving the movie theater. I don't want to leave the movie theater yet. The movie's not over. Yeah. And then you're leaving the movie. I don't know. It just feels weird and wrong to me.
No, I was feeling that more than I wasn't just the kind of being taken aback by in a bad way, taken out. I
mean, I guess you could like throw, a card up on the screen and just in text say those things, and I would have probably been okay with that.
That would have been cool, actually. Yeah, just to kind of,
because it is just information of like, here's what happened after this night.
Yeah,
I would have much rather it been like, this is just so you know, this was a famous night that they all wrote about, and here's the shit that happened afterwards. Like Mary wrote Frankenstein like 5 days later, whatever it is.
It leaves it in legend more, and I think we want to, since this presents something as grandiose as a legend in that sort of what the word connotates. I think we, as people, we like to sort of have legends and sort of overlook that they were, real people too.
Right. Yeah. So the only other thing, and it's not that it didn't work per se, but I like I said at the top, that there's one element of how it's filmed or sort of the design that I think that if they had done this different thing, I would have enjoyed the movie much, much more. And it's how it's lit. So it's lit well, don't get me wrong, but it's lit in a very sort of the time, like the 80s way. And often that lighting feels like lighting as opposed to feeling like natural in the space. And if we were in this space in this time, it would be Barry Lyndon, right? It would be only candlelight and lightning from outside or whatever. That's it. And if this movie had been lit like Barry Lyndon, I think I would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. But that's just so like a my taste thing. I don't know.
Yeah. From a practical standpoint, I don't know that you want to make this movie that way.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fucking nightmare.
Might have to break the rule to accomplish lightning.
Totally.
Lightning.
No, and that's
lighting.
fine, yeah. Yeah, but like, can you imagine how much more like seeped in that Gothic-ness this would feel if it was all just fucking candlelight and like, like Barry Lyndon does, like shit ton of candles.
I mean, it feels realer.
Right. Well, and I think it would just feel more elemental.
Yeah.
Which is in this movie. Like, I want more.
Right. Let's conjure stuff with our candles.
Yeah. There's no candelabras in this, dude. How?
You're right.
Come on, guys, run around with a candelabra. This movie was made for that.
Yeah.
It never happened. I couldn't believe it.
Missed opportunity. You're right.
Fuck.
So that this is what you're talking about when you said just some creative decisions that you would have preferred.
Beyond that, I mean, honestly, I think the look and like that, like I said, the wide lens feel, like all that shit, I really thought was fine. So there's not a whole lot else that I had an issue with.
Yeah. Great. Well, then, should we see if we have any things of note?
Definitely.
Great. We do that in our next section called Things of Note.
Things of Note!
This should be interesting.
Well, we like to be starting our new tradition of starting Things of Note with indelible moments, ? And we already said, like, the whole movie, I gave the example of that sequence. It was originally just under this section. But I had specifically down, we didn't mention nipple eyes.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Forgot about what, Tim?
Dude, that is the moment. How could I have forgotten? There's just so much going on.
Tell us about it. What moment?
Well, early on, Byron, I think it's when he sees the animatronic sort of gypsy belly dancer person. Afterwards, he has a bit of a rant about, like, he's just having a flip out, and he describes this person that he saw and says that it had eyes for nipples. Then later in the movie, he finds Claire laid out on, what's she on, like a pool table or something, like a billiards table.
Yeah.
Am I just remembering that, or is that where she was? Anyway, she's on a table and she's laid out and she like sits up and she disrobes and he goes over to her and she says, she's, this actress, I think her name's Marion Sear or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, Miriam Cyr.
Yeah. She has giant eyeballs. Like, that's how she looks, and they're wild.
Yeah.
And she says, "Look into my eyes." And we're looking at her face from Percy's point of view. And then she says, "No, look into my eyes." And we pan down, and her nipples look a little strange because they're eyelids that are shut, and then they open, and her nipples are eyeballs. And they're like looking back up at him.
Indelible.
Outrageous and amazing.
And indelible.
The fact that she has to say no, look into my eyes. Not these eyes, these eyes.
And we did kind of miss a couple things that I would put in, what worked. Sort of that, like that's a really good example, that kind of dialogue of the kind of like the grandiose storytelling of it. But like in terms of just the dialogue itself, it's very, like a lot of times it's that kind of very showy quality to it, or very deliberate, in a way that's just theatrical and fun.
Yeah.
And something else I didn't mention that worked for me, like I loved it was just dripping with sex everywhere. Like
totally.
They're always having sex, just in different combinations. It's just kind of like,
'cause man, what else would you be doing?
right. I just love it. So casual.
Yeah.
All right. Any other indelible moments? Oh yeah. I had one more. The knight in shining armor with the metal cone as a phallus coming alive.
Yeah. That one's pretty sweet. God, I really, it sticks out to me when Claire is covered in mud and she's crawling around the cobwebs, like in this dungeon thing. Like, I really like that. That just how it's shot, but like the posture of it, and it's just the vibe of this kind of, she's become more of a primal creature at that point. It's very cool looking.
Indelible, would you say?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Because that's what this section is. All right. Any other things of note aside from indelible moments?
So what I just looked up, which I did not realize. So Dr. John, they're all real people, right? They're all based on real people. Dr. John, because of this night, in reality, they all wrote stuff based on this particular experience as a contest. They said, "Hey, we're all going to write our exactly what the movie says, right? Let's all write our sort of horror stories or monster stories or whatever." And Dr. John wrote The Vampire, which is just a short work of prose, is what Wikipedia says specifically.
Oh, right.
So I didn't even realize that he as well had written something.
And we didn't mention he is played by...
Vampire.
We didn't mention he's played by Timothy Spall, who you may recognize as Peter Pettigrew in Harry Potter 3.
Definitely.
He's great.
He's so young.
Yeah,
it's really wild to see him as a young man.
He feels like the British Paul Giamatti or something.
Holy shit, that's so true.
He's great.
I think that Vampire is on our list.
It is.
As a film.
It's an early silent. I think it's silent film. Yeah.
I think you're right. That's cool. Look forward to that.
I mean, I wish I had more for everyone as far as what this is based on, what's inspired by. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think you get it, right? Like Lord Byron wrote this stuff, and I don't actually know what Percy Shelley is he famously known for in terms, he's, romantic poet.
Let's not make this the section of things of note that we don't know.
Right? But, I do need to fucking read, like, Frankenstein for real. Like, sit down and just commit to it, because I gave up. Yeah. I never finished it.
It's just so different from the movie. It's just kind of, whoa, what is this? It's kind of weird at first.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out who is who for the first, 50 pages.
Right.
I was like, who is talking right now?
Right.
Shit.
Cool. So if there are no other things of note, should we wrap up?
Oh, no, I had one other.
The way you were sipping from your coffee mug seemed...
I'm just so excited I gave myself a little top off, if you know what I mean.
Great.
The place that it's filmed, it's based on, I don't know if they didn't film it in the actual, well, maybe they did. No. They used this other place called Gaddison Place in Hertfordshire, England, so not in Switzerland. That was used as the stand-in for the actual place, which is called Via Diodate, which I want to go to these places.
Yeah.
Fuck, dude.
Me too.
Come on.
For our YouTube channel someday, right?
Oh, can you imagine? Shit. Just seems so fun. Like, we could go to the one from The Innocents.
Yeah.
Oh,
mansions.
Come on. Anyway, so that's really, I just think that stuff's fun. I love, locations. For some reason, that you're like, I want to go to all the locations.
Go to the little island in Nova Scotia or whatever where they built the lighthouse for the lighthouse.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Right.
Hell yeah.
What we can go to close by here, was it the House of Haunted Hill or whatever that has the house up in the behind Griffith Park here that's made by that famous architect.
Let's do that.
I've been there. It's right by infamous murder house.
Oh, I know. I've heard. Yeah, the murder house. That's cool.
Anyway,
that's really close to me. Anyway.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Cool.
Great.
If that's
awesome.
If that is it for Gothic, how about...
You know what? Here's a thing of note. Gabriel Byrne existed before The Usual Suspects.
And he's always playing literal devils or devilish people.
That's right. That's right. He really is. Jesus.
Cool.
Anyway, I love him.
All right.
That's all I got.
For my RecommenDEADtion this week, Tim, I haven't mentioned an actual horror thing for a while. But Tim, since you didn't ask, I feel like I got to tell you, you know how excited I was for Ju-on Origins.
Oh, I do.
Well, needless to say, I watched it and thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's weird. I almost have the same critiques as I do the other ones, where it's just like, you take away the music, it would be so much more creepy. But whatever, I still get into it, And this one, it was really neat how it is like an origin story of the other ones, of that sort of the same cases. So it's neat, and it doesn't go with the same kind of like, pale white ghost screaming cat noises. It sort of takes I don't know, it sort of updates it with sort of what feels realer in a way. It's neat.
Okay.
A lot of, it's like really, really dark, messed up stuff in it. So it like goes there, which is what, let's say if the whole Ju-on series is like about, well, whatever horrific thing led to this grudge that would leave this imprint, it has to be really horrible. It is.
Oh, I like that.
I think you'll actually, I remember kind of what was hard for you about the other ones, the Japanese one we watched. I should say the film that we watched, was you sort of, it takes a while to almost settle on a protagonist, or it's kind of like, you almost have like you're following a few different stories in a way, and they kind of coalesce, and it's like can be a little confusing. This having the series formatting and being longer, it lends itself to that really well. Where it, like we still do kind of jump around and arrive at people more so than the others, but it feels like it just works better for the format.
Nice.
So check it out, Jew on Origins, new on Netflix.
Okay, I will.
What do you want me to check out, Tim?
I don't know if you've seen this, but I watched Horse Girl.
I have not seen it. I've started it, but I haven't seen it.
And I fucking loved it. It's so weird in like just the right way that I enjoy.
Cool.
Because it's essentially, I think, in a really, really reductive, boiled down way, it's kind of just watching somebody lose touch with their, they are spinning, mental wellness is spinning into oblivion. But it's done from the point of view of that person. And so in a kind of in a similar way as Gothic, where you're just experiencing the fucking wacky, ness of reality falling apart around you. And I don't know why I like that so much, but I really do. And it helps to have extremely talented people in it. Like Alison Brie is the lead, and she's fucking amazing in it.
Cool.
And everybody else, just supporting wise, just does a really great job of making you feel fucking weird and off and what the hell. And it's filmed very stark, but also very unsettlingly. And I'm like, whoa, what are they doing to make you actually to accomplish that? Because it feels like they're not doing anything, but they're definitely doing something. What the fuck? So yeah, it's really, really fun. And it for me, in a lot of these, the Duplass brothers have a style of ending. They just produced this one, but I think they helped sort of.
I don't want to know anything about the
whatever.
ending.
But it fits in with their style of filmmaking in a way that I find very pleasing. So I just like it. It's good.
And what is it again?
Horse Girl.
Great. Both our RecommenDEADtions are Netflix things, so find them there. Easy peasy. Great. All right, let's figure out next week's episode. See what the hat tells us.
Yes, let's. Is it yours or mine? It's yours.
I feel like it's my turn.
I'm pretty sure it's yours.
I feel like I hear you saying Gothic, so.
I did.
Now.
Ooh. All right, I'm going to hold it up here.
Something Wicked This Way Comes from 1983. I saw this as, I believe it was 6th grade, this kind of like after school program thing on a rainy day. I think is it a Disney movie?
You got me.
It may be hard to track down, but we'll track it down. You haven't seen it, it sounds like.
I don't think so.
Cool.
It's based on a Ray Bradbury novel.
Yes. Excellent. Great. Well, hey.
No, I don't think I've seen this.
Awesome.
Cool.
Excited to see it then.
Horror fantasy. Love that.
Kind of like Gothic.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
All right. Something Wicked This Way Comes. If you haven't seen it or you want an excuse to revisit it, you should watch it so then you can join us for dismembering it afterwards next week. And in the meantime, you can find us at dismemberinghorror.com or wherever else you just found us. Our big ask is if you enjoyed this, you made it this far, tell a friend. Word of mouth is how we slowly spread our joy and wealth. What's so funny, Tim?
I just, dumb, bad jokes came to mind, and then I had to resist them by laughing.
Great. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Resist yourself by laughing. In closing, Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.